Okay, let's talk about the city. 4 years ago, I participated in Sofia Design Week, and that was the first question we had to answer. What is the color of Sofia? I'll be curious to hear your opinions after, but back then, most people said gray. My answer was slightly different, though, and maybe because by that point, I had lived abroad for several years, but I saw different things, and I said colorful, or szareno. So for the rest of the day, we had to go around the city, look at it, document something. And I was very troubled by the grayness. I wanted to see, okay, what is gray? So my intuition took me to the blocks, paneokite. And I thought, okay, gray because of the concrete. So I photographed many buildings, and this is what I found. Lots of colors. So every balcony is different, every window frame is different, you know. So this was actually the first time I realized it's not about the actual color of the city, but about the way people see it, or the perception of the people. So 4 years later, I find myself working on a thesis project at Harvard, and I came across the same theme. Public has become a dirty word. This is what Boyka Kadyrova, who's the director of territorial planning in Sofia, shared with me in a conversation last summer. It was a great conversation, very honest, very nice, but I was very shocked. It's like, okay, public. So I wanted to understand better this relationship between urban design and people's psychology. So I decided to look at Sofia from 3 different lenses: the historical, contemporary, and futuristic. So today I want to invite you to put on the lens with me and hopefully change some stereotypes or biases. So let's start with the historical one, or Sofia is a socialist city. So I learned that the idea of a socialist city has a long history with modernism. It comes from countries like Germany, then gets transferred to other places like Russia or Bulgaria. But the basic idea is that it's a dream. It's a dream for equal rights. Everyone has the same schools, the same houses, the same job opportunities, and even the same travel time to work. So then the city becomes very important for making this happen. It is very systematic, it is very ordered, it's like a machine. What is interesting about such cities is that the residential neighborhoods. So in the 70s, a Russian architect called Lyulin comes up with the idea of a mikrorayon, or microregion. This is basically a neighborhood with residential blocks, but then it also has a lot of public spaces, like shared kitchens, laundromats, different public facilities. And this is actually the idea behind neighborhoods like Lyulin, Mladost, and Druzhba. So the city actually becomes a network of different parts. It is seen as an organism. I really like this diagram from the 70s, again, and it really shows it as a living organism. Every part is connected to something else. What doesn't work about the city, though, is that it's all the same. It's repetitive. So I don't know how many of you have seen Irony of Fate, or Ironia na Sadbata. I watched it on Bulgarian TV a few years back. And it makes fun of the sameness. The basic story is about a person who gets lost in the same city, the same environment. So this idea of a very public city, one that is happy and functioning, becomes really an image and doesn't function as such. So if you move to contemporary or post-socialist city, this is actually a moment of chaos and confusion in many Eastern European cities. For about 10 to 15 years, there's no urban planning, no city planning in most cities. And it is really kind of becomes a reaction to the past. So the city is a reaction to the socialist idea, and now we have new value systems. Now we talk about neoliberalism, we talk about capitalism. It really becomes all about the person and all about the individual. So then the city, as this form of the group, kind of starts losing its value. And now we have 3 different conditions. We have informal buildup of parks, we have construction of malls, private spaces, and also gated communities or gated homes. Everything is walled off. It's about the private property. Some of recent architecture that probably some of you are familiar with it really expresses a different look. It's all about this something new, something unique, something different. It doesn't react to what is around it. So the city is really a collage. It is a collage of all these different fragments, different parts. And in this context, the public does become something different. It is like a memory of the past. It's like a ghost, or it has a dirty meaning. It's a dirty word. So then what can we change for the future? Well, I thought, OK, these two models don't exactly work. They're two extremes. We need something different, something that is in between, something that I called collective individuality. And the city is very complex. It's not just the built form. It is also politics, it's culture, it's economics. So I thought, OK, we need to think about the city in different ways, like socially, politically, and spatially. So with very simple sketches, I'll illustrate these ideas. So let's start with the social one. In the socialist city, we have everything is about the group. In post-socialist city, it's all about the person. We all say, OK, I think, I know, it's all about me. But we have to start thinking about the group as well. Like, you need to think not only about this is my own needs, but then what is also the common good? Politically speaking, everything is controlled by one party. In socialist, post-socialist, everything is kind of given to private investors. And we really, again, lose the sense of city planning, really, or controlling these private investments and thinking about new models like countries like Germany or Sweden and Denmark talk about social capitalism. So you still have private investments, but they're kind of controlled with a supervision. And then talking about the city, we know that repetition doesn't work, the sameness doesn't work. We all want new experiences. We all want new places, different people. But it's much better to think about them as organized systems. Like this idea of a network that we have lost today, we need to bring it back. You need to think more strategically. So then, I'm not a sociologist or politician, but I spent some time thinking about design. And how can you make something dirty, something public, into something positive? And for the last few years, I've seen great initiatives in the city. There's a lot of changes, and it's fantastic every time I come back. But it's all centered around the downtown area, the center. And then what happens outside, which is primarily residential blocks. So I can't see very well, but how many of you live in such blocks? Maybe raise your hands. OK, a bunch. There you go. So according to statistics, 60% live in such structures. I was raised in one. And they're not going anywhere. They're big. They're massive. We also call them our homes. So we need to think of new ways to approach them, kind of change the perception. So let's take Lyulin. It's the largest neighborhood in Sofia. It was built exactly during the 70s, this idea of a microrayon. And these are some original sketches. It is organized in 10 microregions. It's very well structured and connected to the rest of the city. And I spoke to one designer who right now is a professor at the university, UASG, of architecture here, Dimitar Andrejcin, fantastic guy. And he showed me his original sketch of this place. And he said, OK, look at the dark patches on this diagram. These were all supposed to be swimming pools and sports facilities and gardens. And of course, these were never really built because of lack of money. But then what is actually built as public spaces are these repetition of kindergartens and high schools. And they're not exactly very well cherished, unfortunately. So then how can we make Lyulin into a fun place, a new place? Well, we can build a new center or think about it as a new social hub. And I was particularly interested in microregion 8 because it's central to the whole neighborhood. And it's also connected to the rest of the city. It's kind of trapped between two subway lines. Very easy to get to. And I decided to develop an idea of a new public ground. And I thought about 3 different kinds: horizontal, diagonal, and vertical. So starting about the horizontal, this is basically deals with the spaces between the blocks. So when I was a kid, I would always help. Every spring, I would help my parents, then a few neighbors, make our grdinka. And we had lots of fun. It was a fun activity. Of course, we loved it for a few days until a neighbor dumped some trash from the balcony. But it is very important to think about these spaces as your own spaces. Like, it's not just about your own little walls in an apartment. You need to think about the outside. We still occupy the whole city. It is really ours. So, and there's a lot of space between these blocks, and we can think about community gardens, or different parks, or open-air cinemas, sunbathing rooms, markets. We all love markets. Playgrounds, like for different users. So it becomes really a space for interaction between different ages, different people. And then how about transferring this idea of a ground into the buildings itself? So I thought about diagonal ground. This is basically inserting different functions, different spaces inside the buildings. And we know that the buildings are built as very repetitive, very like stacked apartments, stacked sections. There's no connection between the different apartments. There's no public space in there. And there's all sorts of people living in them, old people, young people, kids, families. So how about having Wi-Fi cafes? Talking about connection here. How about having, for the old people, like the ones playing chess outside of the theater, how about having a chess room for them, or playgrounds for little kids, or different classrooms that could be rented? There's many possibilities. So then you think about these spaces as not only your own, but also for everyone in the city. You change your perception about the building as being like a barrier in space. And then this idea of a vertical ground is basically inserting some of these private buildings, like the new private offices, attach them to the existing buildings, use different materials, like use glass, but also have this juxtaposition between private and public. You can have public pathways going around the buildings, going to occupiable roofs, you always think about not them as extremes, but something that is connected. So then I envisioned this neighborhood as not just this massive space with like barriers, but something that is very active, something that can become a new social hub. So I want to leave you to think about how you own your city. We all live in the city, it's our own. What can you do? Like, be creative, be imaginative. Think about other people, not only your own space. Think about making a gradinka or fixing a little bit. I saw this graffiti the other day, amazing. Think about how this is a new way of changing the space and kind of occupying your own thing. And then the public, which is dirty, can become something nice, something positive. Thank you.